go ahead.
Well, thanks, Christopher. Yeah, welcome everyone. Great to have you join us again for another one of our Tastinars. It's been a very exciting day this side here in Johannesburg at Great Domains, and not only here in Johannesburg, but also in the Cape, as the second release of the Damascene wines happened in South Africa. And yeah, it doesn't happen often in the wine industry, but where you just sort of feel that all the stars are aligned. And Jean Smit, who will take over doing most of the talking in a short while, has over the space of 2 years, I think, carved out an incredibly special brand in a very, very short space of time. And after the release today, it's literally a case of pretty much sold out all around. There's probably bits and pieces at a few of the people that are still selling it, but it's literally almost sold out in a day, which is incredible. I think the only other people that sort of do that are the likes of Evan Sardis and Duncan Savages and Rolls and a couple of others. So it's a very special achievement. And I'm sure Jean is blown away. He's just landed back in the Cape. We've had Jean in Joburg for the last 2 days, taking us through the wines. We've managed to extract him for a couple of hours for a long lunch and drinking other wines, which has been great. And yeah, just awesome to have you join us, Jean. I'm glad you made it safely. And yeah, welcome. How things? I gather you say it's raining back down in the Cape. I told you Joburg's just sun and blue sky, and the Cape's always raining. Huh?
Yeah, it's I said to you earlier, it's you need to be out there. You need to be with the people and tell your philosophy and what it's all about. But when you get back home and you see it's rainy down here, you think of opportunities that you might have missed if you didn't spray in time. And so yeah, it's you need to have your feet in the vineyards. But 2 days at a time is good. We can manage that.
And tell me, man, how are you feeling? You've just landed, and we were just chatting before we went live here. I mean, it's a bit of probably feels almost a bit surreal. Not that you haven't put in the work or the effort, and it's obviously a big team thing with yourself and David Curl, who's your partner in the whole project. But I mean, it just sort of seems crazy, like this release, and that all the wines have just flown out. And there's obviously, as I say, it's a nice opportunity for those that have maybe missed out to support one or two of the retailers that would have got some wine, and then obviously some of the top end restaurants that committed to these wines where you can still go and experience them. But I mean, overall, the response has been unbelievable. How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, it's a really obviously amazing feeling. But the thing is, it's not like it came as a surprise it came as a surprise that we sold out in 1 day. That's certainly true. But it didn't all just happen in 1 day. The day I met David, I basically sat down with him with a 10-year budget already worked out of nights and nights of sitting. And obviously, when you want to go to bed and sleep, you stare at the ceiling and dream of things you want to do, but you need to plan it. So it's very important to strategically plan to where you want to be 1 day. So 10 years, a lot of things change in 10 years in a budget. You know how much changes within one year. But it's you need to not just make wine and think it's going to sell. That's not the way to operate. So you know very well, we do 150 tons in total of fruit that we process, and of that we only put 30% into bottle. Because we really believe in signing long-term agreements with farmers and doing bigger portions of vineyards or entire vineyards, and rather grow within those blocks. So the Cabernet that you try now, if you're not going to like it now, you're not going to like it in 10 years time, because it's going to be the same fruit that we work with. So for me, it's extremely important to have consistency within the brand and grow within, and that's why I couldn't do that by myself. I mean, I don't have that kind of capital, and David has at least got my shared passion for grapes and pockets within the vineyards, or within the in different regions in South Africa. So we work with 45 different vineyards at this stage. to really showcase South Africa, and we will get into that just now.
Yeah, no, listen, as I say, that planning side, I've got a few questions for you on that, which we'll sort of knock on the head as we go through the wines, because I think if you start thinking about what this response has been like, as I said, it's not something that's happened overnight. It sort of almost has happened in one day, but there's been lots of stuff that's happened before. And I think there's a lot of things that you guys have done, which, although on the surface it might seem simple in terms of certain decisions, it's stuff that a lot of people haven't done. And I think it's so important in terms of building a real fine wine brand, which, as I say, and it's now reaped these rewards. But I think I want to get into the Damascene side in a short while, but I think there are quite a few people that, I mean, lots of people know you that are watching, but there's some people that probably don't. And I think it's always quite nice just to quickly have a brief summary of, I don't know, from finishing school to where you are now. People often have those moments when they first got into it. Some people have got I almost say the European intro to wine, where from 3 years old, they've dipped fingers into red wine glasses and they've been fed at the dinner table. And then sometimes people have only had wine for the first time at the age of 20. So I don't know quite where you fit in from that point of view. But yeah, how did it all start? And then maybe just take us through that short journey to now. And I see the picture here, you with David, which is what your current sort of role is. So how did it all start?
So, it wasn't that romantic. There was nothing of France or anything like that. None of my folks traveled even before I went overseas for the first time. So yeah, no, it was a pretty down to earth lifestyle up to now. Born in the Cape, but brought up in Bedasdorp. My dad in banking and my mother in the pharmacy. And for me, it was just from both of them, I really just picked up that you need to graft. So from grade 3, I was in the pharmacy working every holiday. Always wanted to become a doctor. I was just from little one, I just wanted to do that. And then when I got to varsity, unfortunately, I became friends with Peter Allen Finlayson, and he gave me an unlabeled bottle of wine. I grew up with muscadel next to my Sunday lunch with my folks, and then he brought me a bottle of unlabeled, and it was the Hannibal, and it's first time that I finished a bottle of wine, and just absolutely, there was no hangover because it was a great bottle of wine. It wasn't Tastinar, so it was just phenomenal to see how that wine changed my view of wine, and called my folks and said, listen, I'm in my second year of medicine. I know what I want to do. So I changed over to agriculture, BSc wine, viticulture and enology. And then started packing boxes. It's for me, it was Caroline Relima. I worked with her for quite a few years at all the different branches that she had in the Cape. And it was when she was out of the office, basically just looking at her notes. She knows it. I told her many times that when she came back from Europe, and just to see how she lives wine, and to see how she basically describes wine and what she looks for wine, and then also to see what the customer wants. That was for me very important. So it was that was a very important part of my journey, is to pack boxes there, or, even at Spear at the wine shop, worked there for many years as well. And after that, just obviously started working in the industry. So my first 3 years with Adi Bardenos. So absolute mentor in my life, not only with wine. You know him as a philosopher. So I was there for 3 years, but after my first 2 weeks filling barrels there, he tapped me on the shoulder and said, listen, you're going to New Zealand. And that was my first time on a flight. Massive privilege. They sent me over, came back and worked with them for 3 years. And then when they offered me a job permanently, 2 weeks later, Tim Rands called me and said, listen, I think it's time that you come back from California. So I worked at Rustenbach at Russian River and Domaine, and also at Larkmead in Napa. And then Tim called and said, come back, it's time. So I started with him for 10 months, and then Andrew Gunn up the hill. He called me and said, it's time to not be assistant. You need to move up in the ranks and start get responsibility within the cellar. And he offered me the winemaking position there. 10 months later, Mark Kent called me again and said, it's time for you to run Buchenhout's Kloof and do the premium stuff. So Rudiger moved to Robertson Winery and Winimark at that stage, and the gap came open for me, and it was it was 9 years of my life that really where I had to stick my teeth into great wine and learn from the best. So yeah, I went there for Syrah, but in the end came back loving Semillon.
Jean, what was that thing? We can't let everyone not hear this. What was that short story when you worked with Ardi and something about emptying the tanks, and he had a very specific you work
yeah, so that stage it was still 20-ton fermenters, and you know him. Every time you dig out a tank, he rocks up with a glass of sugar water and like ask you to finish up. There's more stuff to do, and I thought when he rocked up, like, listen, this is gonna be another glass of water, and he actually said, stop what you're doing. And I said, no, I need to finish up. Because we also had record times that we were pushing for. And he said, no, stop. This is going to be a religious experience. And it was the Rustenburg 84 that I tried. And for me, that showed that South Africa can do absolutely world-class wines. Later on in the 20 tons, he rocked up with a 52 Rustenburg. Wow. In the same tank. So maybe I was just very slow, but it was, for me, that changed my perception of South African wine.
Well, listen, you probably, those are two amazing experiences, but you probably got off slightly lightly, because if it was the Ardi Bardenhorst of today, instead of the probably would have been some mezcal, agave, high white spirits, high alcohol content white spirits. So sugar water, you can take any day of the week.
Yeah, no, definitely. But the man hasn't changed at all. It was always there. He was just obviously in a different environment. But yes, it was places there. I mean, people throw minerality around all the time. But that's the first time, I mean, when I had the first Matassa, that he also just between pumpovers pulled me in and tasted that. And that's the first time in my life that I really understood what minerality is all about. So it's little things like that, and just tasting, and it's both him and Mark Kent. I think they've got some of the best palates out there, and they really showed me that that's the only way you can learn is taste. I mean, when I rocked up at Rustenburg, I had my CV, and he said, don't even bring it into the cellar. And he just asked the guys, can I pick up a barrel? So I've never sent a CV to anyone. It was just, it's word of mouth and hard work, and having passion.
That's cool. No, well, we'll probably tap into it now, but since you've had quite a few of these, I suppose, Damascene moments. I mean, we've got to be totally appropriate with what we're talking about. I mean, David's, who's in the picture there, had his very specific Damascene moment. He should probably come up on video and tell the story, but we won't put him through that now. You've had your own wine Damascene moments, and I think that's sort of, you didn't know it at the time, but it's sort of built towards the journey that you're on now, which is awesome. And Jean, so I don't normally do this, but I sort of Googled a few things before starting today. I mean, we sort of got to know each other only, I suppose, fairly recently, which was the only reason for my Google, because sometimes you can find some really cool things that no one's going to tell you to their face if you've only just met them or fairly recently. But two things happened. One was humorous and one was very appropriate. The one was a long time ago. I'm sure I found it on Facebook, and it was some lady from Finland that wanted to marry you. I found that quite interesting. Very random stream. You'd done a tasting, and you'd obviously impressed someone on your travels somewhere.
My wife looks Finnish, so it might be.
Oh, there we go. No, but I think on a more serious note, you did and you might not even remember this, but you did an interview. I don't know if it was just online or in face-to-face with a journalist in Europe somewhere and she asked you a whole bunch of questions, and you obviously answered them very well, and there was some cool stuff in there. But I think the most relevant thing, and I'll read it, it's just 2 sentences. And this was back in 2010, so I call it 10 years ago. And they basically asked you to share the secret of your philosophy while you were still at Boekenhout's And I'm trying to link 10 years ago to what you're doing now. And your answer, I'll just read it. And you said, search for undiscovered gems hidden all over the Cape winelands. Put it in a favorable environment and see how nature unfolds its beauty. Always be a step ahead of the process and never react. And I mean, we've spent 2 days together, and I'm thinking of what you're trying to achieve and are achieving at Damascene in terms of trying to bottle these pockets of special land in South Africa. And it's quite cool. I don't know, just coming across that was sort of where your head was at 10 years ago, working for Boekenhout's. And 10 years later, you're now involved in your own project and basically carrying out that philosophy and, I suppose, dream.
Yeah. So people can say what they want of Chock-a-Block. I'm just very fortunate that it was Western Cape back then and not Swartland, because that gave me the opportunity to go and discover South Africa. Mark Kent was one of the guys that always said that there's a lot of great wine going into the wrong bottle. And for me, that's why we tasted every single, it was 2,400 barrels at that stage, taste every single barrel separately. And that's how you can really pick up certain amazing stuff that's out there. But for me, it was discovering people, discovering their stories. And it was really for me to see how patriotism is tangible. You go to one farmer and you tell him what you're looking for, and he's not really looking out for his own interest, especially with the project that I'm busy with now. It's just Damascene is about having those moments. Damascene, for the people that does not know what it means, it's just an epiphany or a shift of minds. So for me, it's really when you realize that something is different and something is unique and changes your perspective. So for me, it happened at a lot of spots that we worked. Even with Wolfstrap Whites, there was some stuff that should have never gone in there. It should have been single bottlings. But Mark, for instance, had a very clear focus on what he wanted to do, and so that's also very important. I think in all businesses to have a vision, but have focus as well, and don't lose the focus as you go along. Yes, all those pockets were out there, and I got exposure to a lot of them, and relationships that we built up with the different farmers, and then just to tap into that. So for me, I really, you'll see all the wines that we're going to do today is region specific. I don't do single vineyard sites, and I've got a lot of respect for the people that do that. What would the world be without a Laculine from Arlite? And you need to do that, but that's not what we're about. We want to showcase South Africa. We really think that South Africa has got a hell of a lot to do still to really be known all over the world. Yes, we do make big waves with amazing critics that's out there, but the people need to know about it. It's not everyone that reads Decanter or reads a blog from Greg Sherwood or Tim Atkin. It's the normal people on the streets that also need to know about a country and a brand. So for me, the first step is to basically take South Africa out there and talk about that. Don't just think like play with your cards and chest. So for me, it's about telling the story about Stellenbosch as well. Like if you do a Syrah, do it from Stellenbosch, and do something different from that area. But don't confuse people by doing little pockets and try and be creative and eccentric and then lose people halfway along the way. So and also it needs to be scalable. You need to have something that you can grow in volume. So like I said, 70% of what we do, we don't even put into bottle, but it's to be able to grow into that and still have the consistency. Yeah,
no, and it's actually an appropriate click through to the next picture. And I must say this, so I was in the cellar, what was it, 1 week ago with David. I know you were you weren't on the farm, but so David, we tasted some wine outside, and I saw a picture. I think Christian Eads posted a pic, and I saw this picture. And
A sneaky one.
What's that?
A sneaky one. You shouldn't have.
Oh, you shouldn't have. I didn't realize that. Okay. No, but I saw it and I glanced at it, and I mean, it's so spectacular. And for a South African winery, I mean, when was it, in December? We had a visit at Domaine Faverly in Nuit Saint-Georges in Burgundy, and admittedly they've got the landholding a bit bigger, so their cellars a bit bigger. And I mean, their cellars sort of very similar to this, and it's just a sign of, I don't know, just lots of thought. It's not about bling, it's about functionality, and it's just got a really epic. And it's you must be, I mean, to work in that cellar, you must be stoked.
Yeah, so it's I think if you look on the side, you'll probably see how many people are actually leaving the Zoom meeting now, because I think the philosophy is completely wrong. It's this is not what it's about. It's not what you see there. You should actually see the cellar from the outside. From the outside, it's a shed, and that's the front part of the shed. The side part is different. But yeah, no, it's not about like, yeah. I mean, I said to David, I want a shed, and I want something that's everything on one level. And for me, it was very important that at Boekenhout's, from all the tanks that we had there was always one Nomlo tank that was conical. The other ones were all square, and obviously we had eggs and everything then. But the conical tank was the one that always impressed every single year, and we used it 3 times every year, because that's the one that had the best results. So it was amazing purity, and also just the tannin structure for me in that tank was completely different to the rest of them. So, and it's obviously a lot smaller. Your skin contact to oxygen at the top is completely different, and a thicker cap that you're working with. So for me, I wanted the entire place to be conical, and then also we only have concrete and oak. So yes, it looks flash, but that's not what it's about. It's about having something that's practical. So for us, also everything is done whole berry. So at this stage where we're renting, we basically go and put a destemmer on the top of a tank, strap it with ratchet straps, and just do it the cowboy way to get it into the tank, because for me it's important not to pump or to crush the grapes. So at this cellar, we're just going to basically do it with a satellite tank and put it over the top. It's not about being fancy and
I think we might have lost John. Let's give it a couple of seconds and let's see what happens. John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I can see you, but you.
There we go. Yeah, sorry, you just went.
Yeah, sorry. So I don't know where I lost you, but so for us, it's very important to have whole berries, which is a completely different fermentation that we get, and also different profile that we get. And the tannins are a lot, for me, finer, and so that's the kind of wines that we do. And you obviously saw it the past 2 days.
Yeah, I think it's just the cellar. I know where your head's at. It's not, the emphasis isn't on the cellar, but I think it's nice for people to see where you work, because it's all about functionality as opposed to fashion or the aesthetics. I mean, they've obviously
look past that. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've obviously done it.
For the pub, it's just there.
Jean, it makes sense to probably, I'm just looking at the time, we probably need to get stuck in. I mean, I think you want to, and it's also a nice intro, because we'll start with the Pinot, if you agree with that. Yes. And the Pinot is obviously very relevant, because that's obviously coming from your doorstep. You don't have to travel too far for this one.
So yeah, it's the Moyamika Pinot Noir is actually what David's got me to do. He first called Peter Allen to do it for me, and Peter Allen said it's going to interfere with his surfing time. So luckily he gave me a call to do the Semio, the Pinot for him. But I said to him, listen, I can't go away from Broeknotskloof and do Pinot for you. I can live my dream and do what I always wanted to do and showcase South Africa. And I brought it to the table, like I said, with a 10-year budget. But this is the one that's from the farm itself to showcase Elgin. So Moyamika is so basically, if you have a look at that's Moyamika. And Moyamika was Genevieve, David's wife's late mother, who was South Africa in 1959. But for us, it's just in memory of her and basically showing Elgin and showing Pinot. So this is a combination of 777 and 667, the clones that we've got in there. And the entire idea with this wine is to showcase Elgin, and we're not trying to be Burgundy. It's those two clones. It's about perfume. The 667 that's in there is a lot more structure that we get in the wine. And then the perfume from the 777 is very important, but 777 also gives you a lot of extraction. So for us, it's important to really take our foot off the pedal, to have a lot more elegant Pinot Noir, and go into light toast barrels and into blonde toast barrels for so 300-liter barrels for only this was 16 months that we actually went into it, and it's really about just showcasing Elgin. So we're going to focus with Pinot and also with Chardonnay at this property. We're not going to touch any other grape because we want to focus and have a completely different brand to Damascene itself.
And Jean, when because we took a visit to the back there, where you showed me that the land that obviously has never had apples on it, which is pretty cool. So it's virgin land that you're putting the Chardonnay onto.
Yes.
Yep. Is that going to be Moyamika Chardonnay, or you guys haven't decided when you get to that?
Yes, no, it will be Moyamika Chardonnay. Sorry, it's just a little one that came in. The Moyamika Chardonnay, yes, it's going to be there, and it's we're going to at this stage plant 548 and then also 96. What I like about those two clones are I think 95 works exceptionally well in places like Stellenbosch, but I wanted to showcase that minerality focus and just more austere kind of Chardonnays from the area. Then the last site that we're going to plant will be Eshela, and it's not to be fancy. Once again, it's a site. If you have a look at the social media that we posted at the angle that we've got there, you can't get tractors and stuff on there. So, but it's a site that's south facing, Glen Rosa soil, so it's just rock all the way from the bottom of the profile to the top, and it will be exceptional stuff coming from there. So it's that's going to be in 5 years' time. So we don't have to talk too much about it, but follow the journey. There's amazing stuff that's still going to come from there, and you can make great stuff from 5-year-old Chardonnay. Pinot Noir is a different story. This is 10 years old, the block, and it really took that 8 years for the block to really shake its feathers and get into its maturity.
And these are the vineyards which Peter Allen wants to, in the dark of night, come and steal some grapes. But yeah,
yeah. So yeah, we do about 3.1 hectares that we've got. We've got 2,700 bottles that we produce from there. But once again, it's something that we want to grow into. And it's about so for the first few years we work intensively with NDVI imagery to just get a lot more uniformity in the ripeness in the block, and then we'll pick different pockets, ferment everything separately, and then just scoop the cream off the crop, and then we'll grow into that in the future.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, I'm excited to see what happens, because I think that when we've tasted it in the last 2 days, and wrongly so, my brain was sort of gravitating immediately towards, let's say, the Damascene labels, because the Moyamika is just the Pinot, and then that's the first of the wines, and you sort of suddenly, shit, this is actually not that you're expecting it not to be good, but it's sort of it took me by surprise in the sense that it needs to be taken seriously. And I think after 2 years and those plantings, I think that's a very cool wine to watch. in terms of being the total dark horse in the range there. But that's my
It's actually when we met with Michael Frijon, he tasted the wine, and second year in a row this year he said that it was for him the best Pinot Noir that he tasted in the entire world, under 350 rand a bottle. And that's exactly what we wanted to hear, because people completely get optimistic when it comes to pricing Pinot Noir. And for me to get that from a person with that palate, and to say that this is where we can actually grow in volume in the company, is just refreshing. So
yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I suppose we're moving on to the one that you make in industrial sized volumes, the Semillon. I mean, there's just millions of bottles on the market. It's flooded and buyed everywhere. No, jokes aside, this is obviously the wine that sold out first, I think, everywhere in South Africa today. This is obviously a big part of your story, especially with what you did at Boekenhout's. Actually, the other day, I think it was the 2000 early 2000s, and the wines age amazingly well, and you've obviously got huge experience with it. So it must be cool to be working with it. And maybe just give us a bit of a background to the two vineyards going into the Semillon.
Yeah, so we work with two different vineyards. The first one is La Châtaigne, and Richard Parkveld is the owner there. We just have he saw the passion in me for Semillon. That was planted in 1942, and then we've got another block that's planted in 1962 that we work with. And there's about 15% of Semillon in there. And it was one of those wines where people asked me, what are you smoking to basically do Semillon? And for me, it was just, I mean, the first truck that arrived at Boekenhout's Kloof was red and white grapes in one truck, and out of ignorance thought that needs to go down the road. It's not for Boekenhout's Kloof, because it's not what I expected at Boekenhout's Kloof, but it was obviously Semillon Gris that's in there. So for me,
I think you said you wanted to send it to the co-op, wasn't it?
Yeah, a co-op in another town. So it was something that really opened my eyes for, and to understand how special it is. I mean, if you talk about South Africa, and you need to have Semillon in your lineup. I mean, the first stuff that came in the mid 1600s had Semillon with it. The first stuff that was planted out at Bishop's Court still had Semillon in it. And then in the late 1800s, 93.7% of everything planted in South Africa was Semillon. So how can you not talk about Semillon if you talk about South Africa? So it's a completely, this doesn't make any money for us for what we put into the vineyards, but it really just encapsulates the entire story. So Semillon definitely cut deep for me. If I would go and put my head down, it will be with a glass of Semillon. For me personally, the 2019 was I think my closest to what I want to see out of Semillon out of South Africa. We're not doing Pisac, we're not throwing new oak at it. This is only older oak that we've got here, but that salinity that you get in this wine, I mean, you can see there, Jan Boeland Coetzee always says that Franschhoek soil is only good for building, and there you can see what it looks like. But it's this is all alluvial soil, but still there's that amazing salinity that you get, and that's why it pairs so well with scallops and all kinds of shellfish, and probably everything going to Scandinavian countries from South Africa. So that's really just I think it showcases South Africa to its best.
Yeah, actually, that's the wine I've got in the glass now. So this is a bit of the leftover from that tasting we did yesterday, and the wines, it's just probably showing better, to be honest. The length, the precision, the fragrance, it's a knockout. So yeah.
Leave it in your glass for another 2 days.
It's almost finished. That's the problem in the glass.
It's really a wine. I mean, if you look at Semillon from these old vineyards, it's definitely after 10 years. It's only, I mean, if you look at the 04s from Boekenhout's now, that's really, I think, in its prime. So those are the wines that you need to put down and just forget about it and leave it for your kids. But yeah, I make it in a style that yeah, I think that it's broad, but it's got an amazing acidity as well, 5.4 for South African Semillon, and then a 3.2 pH. So it's just yeah, it's all you want in Semillon.
And Jean, before we go into the Cab Franc, just one quick thing which I think is pretty cool is obviously that, and it sort of rings true to the whole range pretty much, is that we were chatting yesterday and you said that obviously on the Semillon, which there's potential to make a bit more without sort of compromising on the quality at all, which I think is obviously exciting because it'll be nice to have a bit more wine. But I mean, how have you gone about sort of limiting it to what and versus the potential? How do you sort of juggle those two things?
No. So for Semillon, we must have misunderstood, but Semillon we can't really grow in volume. I mean, we have what we have, and that's so what you've got now, 1,300 bottles. That's pretty much where it will be.
Sorry, then it must have been one of the other ones. Apologies.
Yeah, no, that's what we have. If we're going to put anything else in there, it will just really take away from the wine. Everything that's younger out there is GD1 clone. That's just a very pyrazine driven and mostly trellised as well. So it's just, yeah, it's one of those. It's there. Grab it if you can get a hold of it and grab. I mean, today it was out in one day. But yeah, like I said, that's not how we're going to grow the business. It's just it makes it a bit more interesting, the offering.
So in fact, John, it's in fact the exact opposite. It's the only one in the range that you probably can't.
Yes. No. Exactly.
Maybe I got it the wrong way around. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, and then I think if you're happy with the order, the next one will be the Cab Franc.
Cabernet Franc. You can see the one on the left I took, and the one on the right, someone that can do photography took. But the one on the left-hand side was when we harvested, and I thought it's just to showcase what the soil looks like. So this is a Cabernet Franc. I really think that there's so many missed opportunities with Cabernet Franc in this country, because when I worked with the journeyman, for me it was always the Cab Franc that stood out in that wine, that fennel licorice, and we started working with this block once again. A very good friend of ours, Donnie Statler, basically pointed me out to this site and said if he's ever going to do a Cabernet Franc, it would probably be from this site. So that's the kind of people that's out there, not looking out for their own interest. And there you can see the one on the right hand side is also from exactly the same site, just through a different lens. But it's just granite, extremely poor soil. So it is the GD1 clone, the CF1 clone. So the first ones that came into the country. But you can see there the tiny berries for CF1. So very floral. It's always a lot of rose water that you get in this. Chris Dyack always, like last year when I went to him, he pulled out a black radish, and it was spot on. It was really like you pick up so much of that in the wine. So this is done in a foudre because I really wanted to showcase the soil, where it's actually coming from. You can see there how poor the soils are, and that's so the tannin you get there. This is at 12.8 alcohol, and still that intensity that you've got of perfume and of fruit with that tannin is, for me, just very unique, and you need to showcase that. And so Cabernet Franc, once again, it is a hard sell. You guys sold it out in one day, but it's something that we need to show the world that we can do. I think people like Lucas van Lochenberg, he's doing an exceptional job, also doing it in a similar style to that, but from a different area. We did about 20% of Polka Dry also in here, but we don't do any whole bunch. So there we a little bit different to what they do. We don't. This is everything just whole berry, but everything destemmed.
Yeah, I think for Cab Franc, for most of the winos in SA, I think, well, let me speak for myself rather. It's often you see it on the label, and the first thing I'm like, how green is this thing going to be? Like, and that's always my worry. And if it goes into those sort of extremities of that green profile, personally for me, it's not maybe my style. But without sort of getting into the full evaluation of the wine in the glass now, which I've got, You just go, it's perfumed, it's elegant, there's no greenness, and it's balanced and it's long. And I mean, for those things, if that's not an attractive sort of CV for a wine, then I don't know what is. And then you say, oh, by the way, it's Cab Franc. So yeah, I love this wine. I think it's spectacular.
Thank you. It's also we see now the wine from last year is really starting to show what we actually exactly want in that wine. So I mean, none of these wines we're actually going to get international critics to write about. We first want them to evaluate it next year. I mean, it's going to be out, but I think we really need to judge the wines fairly to its potential. So that's why we're not going to let anyone taste it for the next few months. So next year only.
It's good to keep. You can't just give everything to the journos quickly. They've got to sometimes fight for it, seek better that way. But I think it's the right call, like even if the wines aren't going to be available, but I think if they're in a better space to actually taste and especially to reflect what you actually want people to experience, it makes total sense. And if you're in a position to do it, you must do it. So it's awesome. Where are you here, Jean?
So that's Karibi on the Polka Dry. So there you can see we're 14 kilometers away from the ocean. So facing southeast, mostly south. And we actually picked this block. So we share this with Ren and Borman. And it's quite amazing. The first 2 weeks of harvest, I pulled David into the cellar. It was his first visit in the cellar after 10 days of fermentation in a plastic tank at that stage. I said to him, listen, I'm going to sign this for 10 years. This is just exceptional. It's really something that's unique. For me, the 97 Buchanan's Kloof Syrah, which is it's probably to my left where I'm looking. It was in Somerset West. It's now a parking lot. That was for me the Damascene moment when it comes to South African Syrah, and I just knew there's got to be something out there, not to copy that, but something that's completely different and always a curveball in a lineup if you have Stellenbosch Syrah. So all the respect for the Syrah out there. I just find most of them a bit over extracted, a bit too much oak, too much fruit, and not in a style that I find attractive. So I really wanted to get something that's a bit more perfumed, a lot more spicy. So this site in particular gives a lot more perfume and white pepper, whereas the other site is basically where my back is showing. It's on Bottle Array Hills right at the top. So this is 290 meters above sea level, and the other one is 340. The other one is a lot more. So it's also granite, but it looks exactly like the soil that you saw just now because it's 1 kilometer as the crow flies from there. But that's almost like the Court Brune side in there. I know Court Brune is schist, but it's just that darker, more charcuterie, the bulkier side, the more structured part of the blend, and that's about a third of it. And this block was planted in '96, and this is the one that's giving you that perfume. And so we keep it in foudre, so this is 100% foudre. For 11 months because I want to capture that perfume and not just over extract. So what is very important here is we do 10% carbonic, and it's not carbonic as in the whole cluster where a lot of people say that's just carbonic. We really have this under pressure in a sealed tank, and 30 days later, after not touching the wines at all, so just putting gas in there and sealing it up, and then 30 days later, it was basically completely dry and completely through malolactic fermentation as well. If you do too much of that, I think you lose typicity of site and typicity of cultivar. So we don't want to do too much of that, but there's a lovely purity that you get in the wine, and kind of an old world charm as well that you get in the wine like that. So important part as well for me is 20% we do submerged cap with granite. I don't want to do too much mid-cap. If you talk to the guys in Cote Rôtie, everything on the Cote Brune side with a lot more schist, they do work with submerged cap because it works there. Lots of the stuff from Jammer, if you look at what Kali is doing out in Porcelainberg, it works there because they need to run off that I don't want to say harsh tannins, but intensive tannins that they've got there. But for me, if you talk to the guys, everything on the Cote Blanc side, if you do that, you hide the perfume and you can kind of completely take away from sight. So, but it's a little part there because I really think it brings a little bit more broadness to the wine. Almost, if you look at the guys, what they do at Ridge and those places with their Zinfandels to make it big and bold wines, but we do a little bit of that just to bring a bit of boldness to the wine. And then 70% of it is done between 50% and 100% whole cluster, and that's just where I get that spice. And that spice for me, obviously, it's coming from the area as well, but from the stems, it's not a stemminess, it's not a sappiness, but there's a spice that I always find. If you look at the Jules Barges of the world, 10, 20 years down the line, that's actually where you get that brightness in the wine and liveliness in the wine. So that's for me why I've got that portion.
Now, Jean, this was actually, I don't know if you remember, but this was actually the wine that, well, actually you could say it was in a way our Damascene moment to basically work with you, because a mutual mate of ours, Yan, if you remember, over a year ago, whenever it was, dropped a bottle of your previous vintage of this. And anyway, that's where it all happened. It didn't have a label on. I know your gripe with no labels, but it didn't matter in this instance. And anyway, dropped the wine off, and we all tried it in the office. Oh, Jean, whatever. And then that was actually the wine that sort of did it for us. The wine was incredible. That was the 18, obviously, and it was everything you said. It was the perfume. It's those pockets of white pepper that you get on the nose, which gets me excited because I think it just also takes me to some that sort of DNA that you can get in the Northern Rhone, but without sort of trying to mimic it. It's all SA goodness that's in there, but with that elegance that you can get from the New World. So anyway, that was our wine that sort of did it for us. We loved all the wines, but that was the one that sort of did it for us particularly. And
unlabeled, but not unplanned.
No. And I think to push through, I mean, it's hard to taste the wine unlabeled because you haven't got any of that. You know what I mean? It's you're just tasting the wine, so you really got to focus. But no, and we know your love for Syrah, and I think that's probably our cue. We'll do it in 10 seconds. But then you obviously started to look for other sites, and obviously it took you eventually to a very special place in the Cederberg, very far away. And maybe before you tell us about it, we'll probably just press play on this very short video just to give everyone a bit of a geographical view of how remote this place is. And then Jean can maybe take us to the Cederberg Syrah. But Christine, you can press play if you're there.
Yeah. It looks like we're going to have to talk to Yan because the fiber is a little bit slow there. But thank you for that. I really think it gives you a sense of place. You drive and drive and drive from something like this that's it's green, and you everything that's green after a while just kind of disappears. And then you get there. For me, that's always the place where I go and kind of reset my brain is up in the Cederberg. It's just a vast country, and you really get close to nature. I mean, the first time it's quite amazing when I went up there. Obviously, I went all the way to the Langkloof. I went everywhere except Sutherland because I knew I couldn't get fruit from Sutherland, but we will work on that. So all the extremes that I could get in the country. And then when I got here, obviously, if you go to Cederberg, you go to David Nieuwert first, because he's probably with the man with the most knowledge when it comes to wine up there, especially, obviously being 5th generation. And I just sat with him with a blank page of paper, pencil, and he just started drawing. And just explaining to me how everything works up there, the different soils, the different climate that they've got up there. And this site is about 8 kilometers down the road from them. 200 millimeters more rain that they get there. And where they've got more shell with David, this is Tilburg sandstone, but it's not, it's very rocky, it's gravelly. And on top of ferrocrete, laterite, so coffee clip. So it's the 22 clone that we've got here. So yes, you've got a lot of perfume, but it's a completely different. Where the other one is more violet, so you get a lot more lavender here, confetti bush, that kind of saffron that's coming through. And then
John, sorry to interrupt, man. Before I forget, how high are you here? I mean, this is obviously high.
940. Where that video was taken from is another 500 meters up, but this is 940 above sea level. So over there at David's place, it's the highest one is 1,000 and a bit. Yeah, the other sites that we work with in Cirrus Plateau, that's also 1,100 meters above sea level, and it's yeah, so the big impact here obviously is you're 80 kilometers away from the west coast. You obviously get that cold influence coming when the northeast, the northwest is blowing, but then also you get the southeaster coming from the Cirrus Plateau. So when they've got snow on those hilltops, and it obviously chills it down as well. So not to get into the facts too much, but I think it's very important to know that the average minimum temperature in winter here is 3.8 degrees Celsius. Average maximum is 22.7 degrees Celsius. Obviously, they get their 40s as well, but that's the average summer temperature. But then very important is the difference between day and night temperature is between 10 and 12 degrees Celsius. So compare that to something next to the coast where I was just standing there, is completely different. So your intensity of flavor, of color, of tannin here it's just a completely different ball game. So you really need to concentrate to take your foot off the pedal. We really need to, obviously with Syrah, it's one of those varieties that you can just kind of let it go. It's completely the opposite of Pinot. So for me, it was a mind shift to start working with Pinot again. But you really need to concentrate to not over extract this. So we also do 30 to 60% of whole class here. And then this is only going into food. Most of the wines that's coming from up there, they use new oak, and they also use a little bit of American oak. But for me, and it's a completely different style, and they do exceptionally well. I mean, they've won prizes all over the world with that. But for me, I wanted to showcase the area and the grape, and that's why we're going into old food with this. And that's also 11 months. But this is something that you have to leave this open for 3 days to see where it's going. With that olive tapenade only comes with time, 2-3 days down the line, that only really steps up. You do get it in the beginning, but in the beginning it's a lot more cassis. You think there's a dash of Cabernet in here, like a lot of people do as well out there, but yeah, you just get it naturally.
Yeah, well, this was actually certainly for me the favorite sort of comparison yesterday, obviously putting these two next to each other just to see a bit of the wine nerdy comparison, but just to see the difference between Stellenbosch and Cederberg, same grape, same vintage, same winemaker, same all of that, and just to see how different they were, which was awesome. And John, yeah, actually I often forget this, but just cool to have a few comments. FT and Dwan from I'll actually get to their question now because that's the one I need to ask. But Daryl for joining us, mentioning Peter Allen's too busy changing nappies to steal grapes. Olivia to have you join us. I don't know where in the world you are, but thanks.
Shifting containers, that's what he's doing.
And then always good to have Greg. Thanks for the comments. Slightly change of tack before we go on to the cab at the end, but the question was obviously about the Damascene moment behind the actual label. So because the labels are quite sort of imposing and yeah, they're great. So maybe let's go through how that came about.
So the name came up already for me in 2016. I read an article. Andrew Jeffers wrote an article, and the name, the term was in there somewhere. It just struck home for me. So it's really when you walk into, I mean, it could sometimes be just a vacant piece of land, and you know this is completely something different, but a wine or a vineyard. And I really wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to get people to understand, like it's obviously seeing the light. So that's getting out of the dark into the light, and that's obviously if you look, all the packaging is like that. Damascene, obviously, you've got Damascus, famous for their metal, obviously with the Japanese knives and everything. So that's where you've got the foil there. But it's really just seeing the light. And then obviously with everything we just say from what area it's coming. But it was for me something that it's so striking if you go into a shop to see it. It just stands out because it's so simple, but it's really so effective still to pick it up with your eyes. And then if someone wants to follow us on the journey, they can just pick up a bottle because they're all the same. And we just basically, if they want to experience Cabernet from Stellenbosch, then they pick up a bottle of Cabernet. If they want to see Syrah from Cederberg, then they pick it up, and they will start trusting my palate for the different areas. And that's for me. I mean, if you look at someone like Peter Valso with his blank bottle, I think he did it in a different way, but it was people starting to trust him and trust his palate, and it's. Yeah, for me, that's more important to take people on a journey through the country.
And I think one of the cool things, I mean, just from a commercial aspect, is I mean, outside of the Moyamika, which is obviously very specific because that's where you guys are based, and there's a plan and a project with the Pinot and obviously the Chardonnay. But I think to have these very special sites and wines, these regional wines that you're making, to have them all at the same price level, and it's probably an appropriate time to bring it up because the last wine is obviously the Cabernet, which is now a year older. And we probably shouldn't go into too much detail because we probably know that this type of wine is going to cost a bit more money to make relative to the others, but you've got one sort of consistent price for all the wines. And I think there's actually a message in that besides the sort of behind the scenes stuff where you like, this is what I'm making, these are the sites, this is the quality level, as opposed to having one wine spike at 600 and 400 and different grape varieties, regions. So it's actually, it almost communicates the message, the price. It's obviously a premium price and the wine totally punches at that level. But to have one price, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's once again, it was, for me, it was quite surprising to see how everyone buying the wines said we should price it higher, and especially with this release, we kept the price the same exactly as last year. But for me, it was about input cost. You need to cross-subsidize that. So if it comes to the fruit, or for instance, the Cabernet is the only one that's got new wood. New oak in there, the rest is all the oak. So it really, for me, is I don't want to say the Cabernet is better than the Semillon or the Cabernet Franc is better than the Cederberg. So I mean, everyone, I thought initially certain wines should be priced lower, and those are the wines that every year is actually selling out faster and faster. So it's very important for me. So once again, I want to showcase South Africa and the best of it, and I don't want to say Swartland is better than Stellenbosch. There's enough politics out there. I need to believe in something if I put it into the bottle. So 30% of what we do, we put into bottle, so that I need to actually believe in. Otherwise, don't do it. So we work with 45 different vineyards. And if something is exceptional in that first year, we really see there's potential there, then we sign it up for 5 years. So obviously there's a lot of investment going into that. You can just think if you buy 20 tons of Cabernet from Stellenbosch for 2,600 bottles, it's a massive investment, but it's about where we're going.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, no, it rings true that the philosophy and the wines and the pricing and the packaging. Jean, so I'm just looking at the time here, so maybe we just end off with the last wine. It's obviously a year older, which I know you kept back, the 18 cab, and maybe yeah, just take us through the last one there.
Yeah, so Cabernet. I mean, once again, if you talk about South Africa. Overseas, sometimes they don't even know that we grow grapes here, but funny enough, then the people know about Cabernet from Stellenbosch. So it's one of those that I really think if you tell the story, you need to. It's been flying the flag for us for so many decades already. So I wanted to do it. So there's so many out there, but I think if you can do it exceptionally well and do something classic. People will buy it if they see that consistency within the wine, and especially at 400 Rand as well a bottle. So this is 100% a new oak, and you've guys tried it in the past few days, and every single time people try it, they can't see the new oak in there, and 100%. So the most important part here is there's also some foudre in here. So that's Austrian and German oak that we use, but the rest is all French oak. But the French oak, what is most important there is we only take the real top barrel from each cooper that we work with, and that was something that I learned as well from Buchanan's. Just out of the 2,400 barrels, every single time you go back to the same barrel, and it's the most expensive one from that area because it almost sits at the back. It's not about the charriness. It's not about extraction. It's like a vessel for the wine to show itself. So yes, you'll see it's 3 different sites. So the one site is the one that you've got here on the slide. So this is Polka Dry, and it's on the other side of the road. So it's at the bottom, it's ferrocrete. At the top, it's decomposed sandstone, facing once again south. But this is actually the one that brings a lot more structure to the wine, and there's a lot of that graphite and iron filings you already pick up at fermentation, not because of oaking. So that's why this is the first site that we actually signed up for 10 years, and then the other one is right at the back then at the Hollerberg, and that's the one that's facing north, but it's actually giving us that kind of cranberry. So that's the one that's bringing a lot more finesse and kind of femininity to the wine, that red fruit that I get there. And then the last one is in the bottle array, which is also it's a little bit more sandstone, granite, and that's over a lot of clay, and that's where I get the broadness and kind of shoulders in the wine, a bit more fat, so to fill up that structure. So it's a combination of those 3, and we signed all of them up, and it's just something that we're going to grow in over time.
Oh, that's in terms of that sort of growth in terms of the 6 wines, or let's leave the Moya Meek out because you know what the plan there is, and I'm sure you know what the plan is with all of them. But is there in the range, is there sort of the obvious one which has got the most potential to grow, if that makes sense, where okay, next year we know we can crank that one up and it's going to still be amazing, or the other one you've got to be a bit more conservative? Is it obvious or not really?
I'm hesitant to say it at this point because every day there's another surprise that's coming across. So you would think it's say, for instance, the Cabernet Franc, but once we find a site that is in that style, we might look at experimenting with that again. So for us, that experimental part of the project, that's what keeps me ticking. Farming is obviously the main part of it, but experimenting and being creative, that's for me what puts us apart from the rest. So that will always be there, and that's why I can't say it's only going to be the one. Yes, we've got the most sign up for Cabernet Franc, but it's just because We wanted to work with something that is not virus, and something that we can actually grow into. And we know the sites, and luckily with my experience from earlier years, I could get these sites and the relationships going. But the only one that's not going to grow is the Semio, sadly.
So just remember, there's only one Pieter Valsa, so we can't have like 60 wines in the next 5 years. We be too much.
No. So that's I've had some of my friends in the industry calling me at 12 o'clock at night and saying, always just remember one thing, and that's keep focus. So it's very important not to have too many wines. So we're very aware of that. But the wines that we've got in this range is telling the story of where we're going to go. I'm not going to do a Coolenbar next year and then a Claret Blanche, and that's not what we're about. And yes, I completely back the guys doing, because we need that, but that's not what we do.
Yeah, no, that's why I say I think there's only one guy that can do that, and it's Pieter. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it, and he does it very well. So that's why everyone's different. And no, well, I mean, I'm just looking at the time, John, and I know we've tried to, from experience, try and keep it to that sort of the time that we had set aside, and we managed to get through all the wines. And as I say, we've had an awesome couple of days, and yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I just not to be a stereotype, but I just wanted to thank everyone that tuned in. I know everyone is just so over Zoom, but it is a way to still get out to you guys. So thank you, and thank you for just being part of this. It is about spreading the word. So for us, it's about word of mouth. So, and come, I mean, we're going to be from January, we will be operational in the new cellar. Come, we sit around a table and we drink wines. So that's how we spread the word, not about just a tasting room, pouring wines and not having passion for it. So please come, and we'll share a few bottles.
Yeah, no, thanks. I see Daryl and Wynand. Thanks for those comments at the end there. And yeah, as I was saying, John, thanks, man. We really appreciate the time, and actually, yeah, huge congrats, man. It's been overwhelming response, all deserve it, and with loads of planning and effort. So yeah, you deserve all the success that's come to you. And it's only the start of the journey. So we're looking forward to the next handful of decades.
Thank you. It's all teamwork, and it's the most important is I just need to obviously say it's none of this would have been possible without David Cole. So he's really the guy that backed my vision. So yeah, let's see where we can take this.
Yeah, it was good to spend some time with him, and next time we will tell everyone his Damascene moment, but it'll probably take a bit too long now to tell it. It's a good story that. We'll leave that one for the next time. And yeah, Jean, thanks again, man. We'll see you down in the Cape, and look after yourself, and we'll catch up soon. Drink a good bottle tonight.
Same on that side, and thanks for the effort.
Yeah, cool. Cheers, John. Keep well. Ciao, man.
Bye.